Ken Hackathorn here, my buddy Bill Wilson, another episode of the Gun Guys. You know, Bill and I both often get inquiries about when you go to the range, what do you practice? What do you try to specialize on? And I guess never really thought about it, but we're going to discuss it. Bill, when you go out, what's the stuff you tend to focus on as far as practice?
Well, Ken, you know, we've shot together for enough years that you know that I'm kind of an accuracy oriented guy, and so I'll typically work on precision shot type stuff and multiple shots, multiple targets, a few reloads, because I've found that's kind of one of those skills. Once you kind of have it worked out, you know, you don't have to practice your loads a lot. It just if you just let your subconscious do it, it usually goes pretty well. So I'll focus on some precision shooting to start off, like maybe shoot some groups at 15 yards or something like that. And I got some targets out at 50 yards or so. I'll fling a few bullets at those, and just focus on the basics. Because if I haven't shot for a while, it's always best to just revisit all the basics, make sure everything's good there before we worry about pushing.
Yeah, one of the things that I think that most people don't realize, we all understand that pistol shooting in particular is a perishable skill. But I do believe you reach a certain plateau skill-wise that you can actually lay off for quite a while and then pick up the gun and shoot. And you will have lost some skill, but not as much as everybody thinks. If you're a guy who only goes to the range once or twice a year, well, yeah, you're really going to suffer. But you and I are both at the point where I've had to go for, like, say, maybe 6 weeks where I couldn't shoot. And when I went back out, I wasn't happy with the performance, but I wasn't terribly displeased either. I'd retained probably 90% of what I was capable of. And with a little tuning, you can get back. But I'm kind of like you. I think the same thing. As we get older and a bit wiser, realize with a handgun, it's shot placement. I mean, there's no such thing as knockdown power. And you realize that if you can't shoot effectively, if you think about it, the zone you're shooting for in a self-defense scenario with a human target is a target about the size of the grapefruit, either here or here. And you've got to have the ability to put your rounds where they go. Everybody wants a magic bullet. Well, we know there aren't any. So I've kind of made a study of this, because in the training business, it's like, what are we trying to achieve? And one of the things I figured out is, if you analyze self-defense shooting, be it military, law enforcement, or private sector, they're all fairly similar. The distances tend to be the same. The lighting conditions tend to be similar. The movement, targets are moving, you're generally moving. I tell people it's good to have the skill to shoot at distance, at range, 25 meters and back. That's a good skill to have. But if you really evaluate that on the real world, it doesn't happen a whole lot. It does occasionally in law enforcement. I just saw recently a YouTube video, I think it was a shootout in Las Vegas, where an officer confronts a guy who's come out of a business establishment. He's been shooting. The guy rolls out, opens the door, and he busts about 4 caps. I'm told it's like about 47 yards. He fires 4 shots. You can see the first kabam, 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 and you can almost see him go like, he really focuses, and then on the 4th shot, he fires, and the guy hits the guy in the hip. The guy goes down, and it's over with. You need to have that ability. But most real-world shootings take place at 10 yards and in, 10 yards being long range in the real world. But even at that, people say, well, I'm close, so I don't have to be that good of a shot. Yes, you do. And so I tell people that most of my practice is like you. I've made my targets smaller. And I don't accept the shots that I once did. If I've got a shot, say if I'm using an IDPA, so if I put a shot out of the A-ring, I kind of program myself that was really a miss. That's not what I want to accept. One of the things that I am personally annoyed about now is this obsession with speed. A lot of that was created because in the early days when Jeff Cooper created practical shooting, he came up with a scoring system called the Comstock, which is score divided by time. And that actually puts a major premium on time over accuracy.
Oh, yeah.
IDPA has just recently switched to where they kind of went the other direction. By making a full second penalty for dropping a point, it kind of switched the momentum back to accuracy. And I think that was long overdue. Many years ago, I knew Jim Cirillo when he's alive, and always, Jim was a great guy. I loved to be around Jim. And I can remember as a young guy in Ipsy talking to Jim one time and asking him, well, Jim, when you were in all those shootouts, how did you determine what speed to shoot? And Jim gave me a very profound answer that I didn't want to listen to. And he said, you take whatever time it takes to make the hit.
Yeah.
And he didn't mean going slow. And then the other day, I had a guy ask me, he said, well, you knew Cirillo pretty well. And yeah, Jim was a great guy. Well, in those early days of IPSC, when he shot matches, how did he do? And I went, well, actually, he generally finished in kind of the middle of the pack. And the interesting, if you looked at his scores back then, if you went back to review them, he didn't drop very many points, almost none. Mm-hmm. But his times were not competitive with the guys that were the run and gun speed demons. And in reality, Jim knew something that I think most of us don't get today, or a lot of people don't get. It's not how fast you shoot in the real world that matters. It's how well you hit.
Yeah.
And so I think my stuff tends to be more accuracy oriented. I'll be honest with you, like you, as we get older, this becomes a hindrance. My ability to see the sights as sharply as I used to, I've kind of had to go to a blend where my glasses are corrected so I can see at distance, and the sights, they're both a little blurry. And I have to admit, it kind of has had an effect on my distance shooting. I firmly believe that red dot sights on pistols are the future. We're not there yet. We're a long way from being there yet. But I suspicion for a lot of us, there may come a time when those things are perfected that we may gain some of that distance back that we once had.
Yeah.
Now, do you do many multiple shot drills, or do you limit yourself to singles or doubles, or how do you balance that out?
Well, I've kind of programmed myself, right, wrong, or indifferent. This is just my take on things. I normally carry a 9mm, and I basically, when I'm training for like self-protection type stuff, I fire 3 shots. Each target I fire 3 shots, and that's kind of my default programming is to get three good solid hits. Obviously you wouldn't apply that all the time, but that's the main thing.
It's a good general rule.
That's the main training that I do. Is it's usually 3 shots per target. Normally multiple targets, and always shooting some on the move or movement between firing positions.
Yeah. Because
it's one thing to just stand there in a stagnant position and make good hits on a single target, but when you get put in multiple targets, you put in movement from firing point A to firing point B, and then you put in, firing between point A and point B and things like that. It gives you a little more dynamics, and you easily determine where your weak links are, what you need to practice the most. And that's what I will typically do. Whatever my weak link is, which for me is normally consistently gripping the gun tight, that's what I mainly focus on. And I'm getting better and better at it, but every now and then still I'll, man, the sights will look good. I know I didn't slap the trigger. Everything looked good, and the shot's not where it was supposed to be. And it's always because I relaxed my grip when I fired that shot.
Yeah.
It's always a culprit.
I'm at the point in life where I've, unfortunately, based a lot of life habits, I've damaged my hands to the point where I've got a lot of arthritis in my hands. And what I've noticed is my ability to grip the gun as hard as I used to has somewhat faded. I think I am, but the joints just don't work that well. So that's been a battle. Same thing. I'll notice that if I don't really concentrate on really getting that, like I call it crushing that walnut. Yeah. If I don't really concentrate, I don't always get the control that I would like.
Yeah.
And the other thing I think that most of us recognize, and we're subconsciously, I think we know it, but I tell people, you got to define the mission that you carry a handgun or you have one. Is it for self-defense? Is it for competition? The goals in competition are really, quite honestly, much different often than what it is in self-defense. And if your primary reason for self-defense, then you want to practice drills that relate to, target engagement quickly and very accurately at 10 yards and in with movement and maybe multiple targets.
And demand good accuracy of yourself.
And hold your accuracy standard to a real high standard. If your goal is for competition, it may be entirely different the way you may want to approach it, that one, I need that 25, 30 yard accuracy. I need to be able to reload quickly on the move. I may need to launch a lot of bullets. You know, Tom Givens, as you know, has done a tremendous job of studying his student base over the years and real life. And these are private sector shootings. They're not police officers. They're not people in the military. These are good old people with CCWs. And one of the interesting things he's found of his statistics of students who have been in shootouts, self-defense scenarios, is that most of them, if you can shoot and you can keep your head, it's over with in 2, 3, 4 shots. That's about it. And the other thing is that movement's almost always a factor. One or both parties are moving, and the distance is usually, quite honestly, as he said, 5, 6 yards is kind of the norm, maybe closer. So the reality is, even though we say, well, I want to carry a high capacity pistol, and I tell people, high capacity pistol is an emotional thing. It's not so much a real logical. The real logic is, if I'm only going to probably fire 4 or 5 shots, I don't need a 15 or 18 shot pistol. But most of us feel more comfortable with a gun if we're going in harm's way with more bullets. And I think part of the fantasy, a lot of people with the fantasy, I'm going to be at the mall and Al Qaeda is going to attack or ISIS is going to attack. There's going to be 17 bad guys and I need 18 shots of my pistol and 2 20-round spare mags. And let's be honest, that's a fantasy. And they somehow think that the rounds volume is going to make up for inaccurate skill. And I'm like you. I would tell everybody, practice on smaller targets, hold yourself to a higher standard.
That's right.
Good. Hey, think about it, folks. Next time you go to range, you might want to keep that in mind. Wilson Combat here, YouTube channel. Stay tuned.